Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We are so glad that you can take some time out of your busy schedule. We recognize that you're juggling so much, and so we're happy that you're here to join us for another really interesting webinar, the Psychology Foundation of Canada. And today we'll be speaking with Jen Black Zhou, who's a Master's of Applied Science in Psychology and a registered early childhood educator. And Jan will be talking to us about ensuring the essential emotional needs of young children in high stress times. And today's session will be about calming your brain to calm your young children's brain. So we're happy that Jan is here to join us, and I will introduce you to her, but before I do, just got a couple things I'd like to go over with you. We are recording the webinar, and it will be sent to you in the next few days. We'll also be posting it on our website, so you can find this webinar along with all the other webinars that we've been doing over the last few weeks. We have a Q&A button that's located at the bottom of your screen. If you're having any, or if you've got any questions, this is where we're encouraging you to post your questions. And so please do use this Q&A. We are going to be looking at a presentation of about 45 minutes and then 15 minutes towards the end to answer your questions, and anything that we can't get to, we certainly will try and do our best to follow up. Please queue those questions up. If you have any technical issues, we'd ask you to just send a note to my colleague Pamela at Pamela Sarianis at psychologyfoundation.org. Okay, and so who are we? The Psychology Foundation of Canada, our mission and vision. So we're an organization that's been around for over 40 years. We see a Canada where every child achieves their optimal mental health. And we do this through the use of psychological science. We're really focused on nurturing resilience. We recognize that we all experience stress throughout our lives, and I'm confident that Jen will be speaking to some of that today. So what do we do to help to manage that kind of stress? And so we've developed a few programs in association with psychologists across the country that have been researched and are evidence-informed and evidence-based, and we've been able to work with communities all over the country, and including partners like yourself. So we're really glad that you can join us here today. As I mentioned, our programs span the developmental ages. We start at birth with Make the Connection. So we work with parents and caregivers of young children, and we are really focused on wanting to help to build that secure attachment, because we recognize a secure attachment has implications throughout the life. We move on into the school years with Kids Have Stress Too. This is a stress management program where we are training teachers and social workers and child and youth workers and anybody who has interaction with children to be able to deliver these kinds of strategies, tips for recognizing stress, and what to do about it. And these are programs that we've actually, in the last couple of weeks, with what's been happening in this pandemic, we've had to pivot pretty quickly to be able to move our training sessions online. So I'm really proud to say that we now are offering our Kids Have Stress Too and Stress Lessons training programs online. And if you're interested, I'd encourage you to check out our website. And we also have a program for adults that's called Stress Strategies. And this is where, if you've got a challenge, I mean, we all have different levels of stress, and so you can choose a challenge that you might be facing, and it'll help you work through the problem solving around it. And it's almost like a decision tree. So it'll help you to develop an action plan and move forward that way. So I'd encourage you to check out stressstrategies.ca. So that is, I want to also share about Make the Connection, our 0 to 3 e-learning program. So this is a new program that we have. It's an e-learning course that you can do online at your leisure. It was originally designed for childcare providers and professionals who would be doing home visits with parents, caregivers, and their young babies. This is a program that's all about that secure attachment and very much activities-based. So provides you with, covers the 7 attachment topics in detail, and provides you with all kinds of activities that you can facilitate with parents. You can teach your parents, you can teach your caregivers how to bring this into their family home. So please take a look at our website for that. And now I'll turn it, actually, before I introduce Jan, I've introduced the Psychology Foundation. I'm curious if folks can let us know who you are. So can you please let us know in what capacity are you joining us today? So this helps us to determine or to kind of tailor our talk a little bit. I know that Jan was interested in understanding, you know, are we working with ECEs or professionals, or do we have parents, or maybe both? So thanks for filling out this poll. And I'll just put it. So it looks like, Jan, we have mostly professionals that work with children, and we have both parents and professionals. So that helps to give us a bit of a snapshot of who's in the room, so to speak. And the other poll that I wanted to do with our group here today is, where are you joining us from? So if you can just take a moment and let us know where in Canada you're joining us from. It's always interesting to see how folks hear about us, and where in the country, in this big beautiful country, you're coming from. I wanted to mention again, as in addition to the Q&A, we also have the chat function. So if you'd like to provide some comments, you want to say hi and let us know a little bit about who you are, for sure you can indicate that in the chat. Please just make sure that you are replying to all panelists and all attendees, so then everybody can see your chat. So looks like 73% are from our central Ontario, Quebec, but we have representation almost all the way across the country. So welcome. Thanks everybody for joining us. And now I'll introduce our speaker today. So Jan Black Zhou has taught early childhood education courses at Fanshawe College in London and Conestoga College in Kitchener for 30 years. She began her career as a psychometrist and play therapist with preschool diagnostic program in a hospital, child and family center. And her areas of teaching and expertise include emotional development, infant toddler care, and education and child trauma. Now Jan provides professional learning and mentoring to ECEs and other professionals, other professionals working with children. She offers consultation and professional development sessions to ECEs and child care centers. Online learning modules and webinars are provided through the Early Years Professional Development Center, Dominion Learning Institute of Canada, where she's the Director of Program Development. Jan is the co-author of an ECE textbook, Children at the Center, Principles of Early Childhood Education in Canada, and has contributed articles to the Canadian Childcare Federation's journal Interaction, as well as being an editor and contributor for the Ideas Journal of Emotional Wellbeing. Jan is a trainer for Kids Have Stress Too, so she's very familiar with the program, Second Step programs, and Music Together, which support early emotional and social development. And Jan, we're so happy that you're here with us today, so I will turn it on over to you.
Thank you very much for being here, and I'm so excited, and I was so happy when I got invited to do this, because I love opportunities to bring together the science of psychology and the practice of early childhood education. And this is something that I've done even though I retired from teaching many years ago. Okay, so the title of this one is Calming Your Brain, to calm your young children's brains. And this definitely applies both to parents and to early childhood educators. In my brain, I was focusing on parents being at home with children and visualizing my own daughter, who's an early childhood educator, at home with her 2 young children right now. So the topics are pretty straightforward. We're going to talk about what the essential emotional needs are for everyone, including children. Differences in brain chemistry when emotional needs are being met, or when we're under feelings of being threatened and we feel stress. and your own self-awareness, which will help you guide your thoughts, feelings, and actions, and your understanding of your children's needs, which will help restore that sense of calm in your children, in your home, your children's home, your children's environment. Okay, next slide. Okay, so because I'm a psychology background, for years and years, Abraham Maslow's theory, the hierarchy of needs, has really underlined my understanding. He has a hierarchy that goes all the way up to retirement years, but for the purposes of this webinar, just focusing on the three kind of basic layers. And Maslow tells us that we need to make sure our basic needs are met, first and foremost. Then our needs for safety, and if that's both a physical and a social, emotional sense of safety, and then our needs for connection. And these basic three emotional needs are there all the time, but they're highlighted, I think, during this pandemic. Next slide. So what's different now? I think that we are well aware that we could be living in a potentially dangerous environment with some potentially very dangerous outcomes for some people. And we have a heightened sense that our community environment may not be safe. And if you're in and out of the community, is your home environment even able to be safe? And as parents, you may certainly perceive that there's a threat to your family's well-being. And anytime when we are in that stress-induced state, it is harder for us all to be emotionally available and responsive. Next slide. Okay, is stress contagious? I think stress is contagious. Young children are wired to be very aware of the emotional states of people around them, particularly the people that they rely on for their own sense of being safe and protected from danger. And this is wired into them because this is an innate survival skill. You need to know that your caregivers and your protectors feel safe so that you can venture out and feel safe. So if you as a parent or as an educator are feeling stressed, your stress is going to be picked up by your kids. They're like sponges in terms of emotional awareness. Next slide. And again, this may cause them to lose that second level of sense of safety and security if you are stressed or the adults around them are stressed. And so they perceive your level of availability and stress. And if they feel like you're worried about something else, then they become stressed. I think that makes sense. I think anyone who's been with kids sort of knows that intuitively. So here we are. We'll talk about parents. If you're a parent and you're at home, and whether you're working from home or not working, you're probably stressed right now. I'm just going to apologize for the gender bias. Clip art did not show any man struggling with two crying children, nor any woman working at a computer. I had to kind of create these, but we all know that this is very stressful for whichever parent you are, male or female. Next slide. So parents are struggling. And they might not have, I love these pictures, by the way. Anybody who's tried to work on the computer with a infant or toddler on their lap knows how hard that is. But it does, if you're trying to do two things with one mind, your emotional energy is being drained at a fast pace. Next slide. So I just want to talk very briefly about brain chemistry, because I think probably many of you are aware of this, but it's just a good reminder that we have two basic different states that we move back and forth through. Good to go is when our essential emotional needs are met. Under stress, if we perceive that there's a threat or a danger or any kind of a challenge that we're struggling to meet. And that's true for both children and adults. Next slide. So this is awareness that stress is a full body response. When you perceive a threat, you get primed for physical action. And that's also innate, that's biological, that's the fight or flight. If you think there's danger, your body goes to, I need to be able to defend myself or get out of here. So your heartbeat goes up, your breathing increases, your blood pressure goes up, your muscles tense up. And in terms of your brain activity, you have become much more alert to your senses. Sight, hearing become much sharper, and to the point where sometimes you can even perceive things that aren't there. The next slide. Okay, and so this is again, this might be a phrase that resolves with PCEs. Thoughts, feelings, actions. Think, feel, act. Your perceptions and your needs influence thoughts, feelings, and actions. So if you feel like it's not safe, then the basic feelings may be anxiety and fear. Also, you may be dealing with feelings of loss of connection. Some people may be even dealing with a painful death from someone they know. And so when you're in this state, we need to be aware that our actions are less conscious, less planned, and much more likely to be reactions, reflexes. So, so when we're in this state, we're hypervigilant. We're alert for signs of unfamiliar, dangerous threat situations. I have a niece who lives in Toronto near the Trinity, whatever park. She was very hypervigilant last weekend. And, turns out to be a legitimate hypervigilance because people were wandering in and out of her backyard. And our brain responds to those kinds of threats and we can become overwhelmed with stress when trying to ensure safety is beyond our control. There's nothing we can do individually right now to make our world safer for ourselves and our children. And that can be very overwhelming unless we really work to deal with that kind of stress. And so we know from all of the psychology information that you can help your brain to deal with stress, but you have to take some actions. If stress is interfering with our ability to do that business as usual, to stop, feel, think, plan, and act. Then, next slide. We need to use that Kids Have Stress to Stop Fight as a guide. This is probably one of the most important tools in the Kids Have Stress 2 toolbox. When you feel stress, stop and change the situation you're in somehow. And we'll talk about a lot of different kinds of ways that you can stop. But you have to think and feel and plan how you're going to act. Okay, next slide. Okay, so let's be stress self-aware so that we can calm our brains, to calm our young children's brains. Okay, you have the same essential emotional needs as your kids. You need a sense of safety, and you need the social safety net of your connections. You need your network. Adults need to support each other, even if we're only doing this online and through the telephone. You need to engage your sense of support, because those connections, we can help sort of co-regulate each other. You have to recognize, and I think most of us do, that we are stressed. We have to recognize how it impacts us, and then we have to seriously work to reduce our own stress. Have some actual strategies. Next slide. Okay, so this is just a quick little picture board. Do you recognize any of these as strategies that you use? And again, if you're a full body person, you may be using physical activity or yoga. If you're more of a cerebral person, you may be listening to music or reading books. Anybody can enjoy water play, hot baths, and as in terms of getting your brain into a different mode, any kind of creative activity. And the thing is that because we're all different ones of these activities will appeal to us. What's important about it, and I was listening to Jean Clinton do a talk, and she said, what's important about it is to realize that the minute you choose to engage in a stress-reducing activity, it changes the chemistry of the brain. It forces some of those stress chemicals out of your brain so that you can make room for the activity that you're bringing into your brain. So seriously make a list of these, or if you have other stress-reducing strategies, and just be sure that you're building them in. My mother was a teacher, and she told me that when she taught in a one-room school with 8 grades, that she realized right away that she was prone to getting stressed. And she said, you know what I need is a body break. So she told the kids, if I need a body break, you probably need a body break. So I want you to remind me every time the big hand gets to the 12, or every time it's right on the hour, we're going to get up and we're going to breathe. So take a second now, and as I'm talking, just slow your breathing down, because that's a huge change of brain chemistry. And then move your body in some ways. In the Kids Have Stress 2 program, they talk about who knows, shrugging your shoulders, who knows, or reaching up to the sky, pushing the clouds away, push, push. Even that tiny little bit of physical activity would start to change your stress hormones in your brain. And if you persist at it for 15 minutes or more, you're going to be in a whole different frame of mind. Okay, thanks. Next slide. Okay, so this is what happens when you get back to calm and engaged. Your heartbeat and your breathing go back to normal. Your blood pressure goes back down. Your muscles relax, and your brain relaxes, so that you are able to be more engaged in what you're doing. You're more able to have conversations and to recognize your feelings and to think and plan. And so we're going to be talking as well about how this is exactly the same for a young child who's stressed. If you want to talk to your child about what's going on, first of all, you need to get them back to calm and engaged by getting their breathing normal and their muscles relaxed and their ability to focus. Okay, next slide, please. So part of what we want to do is really work on our perceptions and our own needs. We need to challenge that thought that we're not safe. We need to say, well, the global environment might not be safe, but we're safe in this home where we are. And then because you feel safe, and the thoughts and the feelings go back and forth, I am connected. I have a great bunch of kids. I like what I'm doing. So you use your thoughts to influence your feelings, and then your feelings influence your thoughts. And the good news about that is that your actions become much more intentional and goal-directed, so that you're ready to share your calm with your kids. Next slide, please. Okay, so when you feel safe, that's contagious the same way that your anxiety is. Your home is safe. You don't need to worry. The adults are looking after the problem, and we're keeping you safe. And so that's the message you want to be sending to your children. Next slide, please. Okay, so now coming back to talking about the children, one of the things we know, because of their brain development, is that young children have real challenges in coping with stress and maintaining a calm emotional state, because their brains are still developing in this capacity. Usually takes up until about age 6 for children to have self-regulation, and for some children with more difficult temperaments or in more difficult situations, it can take much longer. Next slide, please. Okay, and if you're an ECE or a professional working for kids, and probably as a parent, you already know this. Before children develop language to tell you what they feel and need, they show you with their behaviors. And we all know what that can mean. It can mean a real challenge, or it can mean a real concern. Next slide, please. Okay. Although every child is unique in the ways that they show you, there are some typical ways. And here we have our 3 typical ways in ways that you can relate to. Now, if we have the next slide, these are natural stress behaviors, the same ones adults have. If you can get away, whether it's running away or hiding or just sort of putting your head down and refusing to engage, that's a flight response. If you're pushing or grabbing or hitting, that's a fight response. If you're screaming, you're moving into a very hyper-aroused state that's a child is starting to feel panic. And I think that those are kind of the things that we know are natural stress behaviors. And the fourth one we really need to think about a lot. People who are stressed seek a trusted person for comfort and protection. And I can't tell you the number of times through my own adult years that I phoned my mom when I was stressed. My mom is gone now. Now I phone my sister or one of my best friends. But proximity seeking is a very strong stress response as well. Next slide, please. So proximity seeking is innate, it's natural, and it's a positive strategy for children to deal with stress. And it builds the trust that children need for those strong attachment relations and for their ability to just feel connected and safe. I love this picture. And again, I want to say, just in seeing the comment go by, that our Ministry of Education documents for the early years and for child care recognize the importance of children's well-being as one of the things that are so important if children are going to be able to feel free to learn. So that this is a long-going issue as well as an immediate COVID issue. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so because of their developmental immaturity, young children are really highly dependent on the presence of their parents and other close connections. And it can be, when their children are going back and forth to childcare, they need the exact same kinds of close connections in childcare in order to feel safe and calm. If parents are struggling, and not that my daughter is really struggling, but I love when I can get on FaceTime with my granddaughter and my grandson, and you can see how beneficial it is for those other people that care about and love those children to connect in. And my little grandson is so funny. He calls me Gumba. I'm jumping Gumba. I'm jumping Gumba. And it's just so much fun to see that. And then I see that my interaction with him, even over the internet, is still helping to co-regulate him. Okay, next slide. Okay. I stole this quote because I just think it's so important. Dr. Vanessa Lapointe is an author and and a professional mental health worker in British Columbia. When children are connected, they can co-regulate. When there's disconnection, they are dysregulated. And if you know Stuart Schenker's work, that will resonate with you. And if not, this is something that you just keep in your head. Connection is co-regulation. We need each other to keep us calm. Okay, next. So the one thing that we want you to encourage in your children is, if you are feeling unwell, if you're not good to go, come to me. Come to me. I will help you. Together we will co-regulate, and then we will communicate. We'll have a conversation. But don't discourage kids from coming to you. Oh, I'm glad you came. We can figure this out together. And that's what young children, I believe children all the way up, teenagers, all need to hear this from people that care about them. Next slide. So, one of the things we know about being able to encourage a sense of calm in young children is being able to reassure them, yes, you're being heard. Yes, you do have a way to communicate. Even if your way is behavioral, even if it's yelling, screaming, thrashing about on the floor, I hear you, I see you, I understand that you're upset. So they need that sense of being heard, their message being received, and they also need a very strong predictability in that response. So that every single time they send out a message of dysregulation, that the parent is going to show up, that the educator is going to show up and say, I hear you. I'm here for you. What do you need? The child might say, go away. And that's a little bit of a message, but you don't go very far away. You just go enough away to give that child that sense of privacy or space, but you still stay close in touch, and you watch for when the child is ready to connect. And then you say, okay, are you ready now to talk? Are you ready now for that big hug that I think you need? With that predictability that the parent cares enough to respond every single time is going to help the child to feel calm. Next slide. I call this the caring dialogue, and I use this in a lot of my workshops. It's so important. The first part of the communication is that you pick up on the nonverbal cues, and that you listen to a child who's saying things even if you don't agree with them. It's too hard. I can't. I don't want to. I know. I understand. I hear what you're saying. I get it. Okay. And then you normalize this. And this is so important. You're not bad for being upset. Everyone feels that way sometimes. I feel that way sometimes. I get really frustrated. I get really sad. I get really worried. And then you say, but you know what? We have to learn some strategies. What do we do when we feel that way? So this is a very important part. If you've ever taken any counseling or training on, on supporting people, you know that this active listening is very important, and the normalizing is very important to show the connect. I get it. I really do. I can remember, and I wasn't going to tell too many stories because I know that we don't have too much time. But I can remember an ECE student telling me a story about reaching out to a little guy who was constantly hitting. And she said to him, I remember when I was your age and I used to hit my friends too. And she said he looked at her with his most incredulous look. You did? And from that moment on, he was willing to listen to her because he knew that she got it. And he also could see that there was hope, that there was going to be some ways moving forward. So in ECE, we have this word, teachable moments, and these are what these are. So you model sharing your feelings and how you're dealing with them. So when you're feeling frustrated, because maybe it's messy and maybe the kids aren't picking up their toys, you say, I feel like I am very frustrated right now. I need your help. Other people, you may say also, you seem upset. And so you model your own feelings and then you identify your children and you start to use the emotional vocabulary they need. And other than happy, the main 4 vocabulary words that young children need are sad, scared, frustrated, and angry. As they get older, those emotion vocabulary words get much more complex. But this is enough for young children. Okay, next slide. So this is the kind of the fun part. We want to encourage children to join in our stress reduction activities, or I've got in brackets theirs. If you know what they enjoy to be calm. My granddaughter, it's Play-Doh. She can spend ages on Play-Doh and she gets very engaged. So, but you get together and you do stress reduction activities together. So in the beginning, when I feel frustrated, doing some dancing makes me feel better. Okay, so here we are. If you like music, chances are your children also have a joy of music. So you do music together or you do music together separately. If you like books, encourage children to look at books with you. Children of all ages love literature. And I think it's very important that we get that that sense of, I even Robert Munch said, sometimes it's not about the reading, it's just about that 15 minutes of totally focused one-on-one time. Next slide. Okay, if you're a mover, or if your child is a mover, then what we want to do is we want to get moving. If you can get outside, even better. Run, just run. Jump, dance, roll. Rolling is a surprisingly beneficial activity if you're in a small confined space. And if you put a few pillows down or lump up some blankets so that the rolling is not over a flat surface, it takes up a lot more energy. And kids will roll and jump on cushions for inordinate amounts of time. Sometimes it's calm movement. And everything that we know suggests that kids can and do enjoy yoga or other kinds of exercises that you're doing. So do them together. Okay, time, body break time. Oh, is the big hand at the 12? Okay, next slide. Art and sensory. Oh my gosh. So these two are my granddaughter and my grandson, and they love drawing art. Water play, sensory play is so important. And however you can get it. In the bathtub is great. If you're happy to stay in the bathroom and do some checking on your internet while your kids splash, great way to help. Next slide. Well, get outside. Look at the sky. Look at the sky. Check out nature. We spend a lot of time in my backyard looking for worms and ants and bugs. We just look at them. We don't touch them because neither of us really enjoy the idea of touching them. But take a look at them. Even if you can't get out where you can lay on the grass, it's so good to look at the sky. So, next slide. Okay, I love this quote. I don't know who this person is, but this really, for me, it sums it up. When little people are overwhelmed by big emotions, it's our job to share our calm. Don't join their chaos. And it's very easy to join its chaos, but it's such a gift if you can invite them to join your calm. Okay, next slide. And I'm doing another webinar tomorrow, and we're going to be looking in a bit more detail at the idea of more coping skills for kids that you can do through emotional literacy and play. Because today we just really focused on the idea of joining children in stress strategies that you do together. Okay, next slide. Okay, here we are. I wonder if you have some questions. Covered a lot of territory fairly quickly there.
Thanks, Jan. So we do have a few questions that have been queued up, but I would encourage people to continue to type in your questions in the Q&A, and that way we can try to get to them. We've got a question from Ashley, who's asking, when we return to the classroom, how can we allow for the stress response of proximity seeking? Young children need a hug sometimes.
You know what? That is my biggest fear for children going back to childcare. And honestly, I think this is a question that we as a profession need to direct to the federal and provincial ministers of public health. We have to find a way to convince people that childcare really can't be effective without physical contact, that it's going to be very, very difficult for young children. And maybe they'll have some answers, or maybe they'll say, it's too soon then. And I don't know the answer to this, but I know that one of my biggest worries is how ever our ECE is going to be able to go into childcare and say, sorry, I can't hug you. And so I don't know the answer to that, but I think the more people who raise that question with public health, the better answers we'll get and the safer we'll keep our childcares as we return.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that this is such an unpredictable time for all of us. And so thinking about what we can do today, but also thinking, well, things are going to change and presumably we'll be back in these spaces, and what will that look like? So I think it's a real concern. I'm curious as far as, is there another way that we can support that proximity seeking if it isn't that physical contact? Jan, do you have some ideas on that?
And I think so. I think a lot of it can be nonverbal. I would also really suggest the idea of a cuddly from home, that we, they have something that they can hug. Some have suggested the virtual hug, where we have our arms out, encouraging kids to hug themselves. You give yourself a big hug, and that's from me. So we can also talk about that, and a lot of things that are very helpful for kids are mirroring. So almost like the virtual fist pump, or lots of things like that. So I think I think we really need to not give up on that as just being such an important connect for kids. And maybe you talk to the kids. How are we going to do our hugging if we can't touch each other? And you know what? They might have got some ideas of their own that are going to work.
Yeah.
But I think something that they can hug is important, whether they bring a pillow or a stuffy from home that's theirs.
Okay.
Oh, there's another good one. Sing your hugs. Yes.
Sing your hugs.
Yes. I like that. Thank you.
I like that too, a singing hug. So we've got a question related to how do we minimize our own fear. So Jan, you had mentioned, if we're feeling stressed, then kids as little sponges are taking that on. So I'm curious as to if you've got advice for parents who might be feeling stressed and how to keep that from rubbing off on their kids.
So what I think is that this goes back to that think and feel back and forth. If you're thinking all the time about how stressed you are, you're going to reflect that and project that out. So you have to take your the public health unit's word and your operator's word that the child care is safe, that all of the proper cleansing things are happening, and you have to talk yourself into believing that it's safe. And then you can communicate that. And I think that if you can't honestly feel it, then again, I think we have to get back to people with way more power and say, because we don't want to be one of those childcare centers that has an outbreak in the first week. And I think there are ways to keep it safe. My daughter's a nurse, and she knows how to keep it safe. But you have to use your self-talk to keep yourself feeling safe.
Okay, thanks for that. So here's another question as far as going back to normal in the classroom. How can we reassure kids as we're transitioning back once they're back in the classroom?
Well, this is exactly where we use our emotional literacy, and we say, okay, so here we are. Everybody's got to have feelings about this. So you have what one of my favorite guys is Dan Gartrell says is a group meeting, and you all sit and you talk about it together. And I have many Indigenous friends, and they believe this should be done in a circle where you take turns as you go around the circle, and each person gets a chance to say what they believe or what they think they feel. And then you draw those normalizations. Yeah. How many feel that way? Yeah. And then you strategize together, even with very little kids. Okay, so what's our plan? And if you know the kids have stress 2 training, you know that a lot of this is pre-planning. Okay, so you know kids are going to be upset. Chances are we can't have water play, although I don't know that, but any kinds of sensory materials, lots and lots of Play-Doh, lots and lots of sand, because those are things that children use naturally as calming. Take the pressure off things that involve high-level thinking. Like, don't try to do lessons, but do lots of things, and tomorrow we're going to talk about this, the kind of play that doesn't have a proper ending, the kind of play that's open-ended and there's no wrong way to play, and also music. I just can't say enough about the power of music. And one of the things that I'm just blown away by is some of the stuff that's on the internet about using music to communicate the connects and to use music for calming. And so really don't go back without a really good playlist of different kinds of songs and dance, because dance you can do and feel connected even though you're not touching. Singing you can do together without having to be physically touching. And the more of those kinds of things we can do as a group, and the more then you just have to really tune into the one or two kids that you might not have hit their kind of a strategy that's going to work for them.
I love this sort of the advent of these kitchen dance parties that you see families doing. I'm a big fan of that. So we have another question just as far as, Jan, some words of wisdom for someone who's going to be starting an internship at a daycare in the following weeks. So wondering if you have any words of wisdom to share as she starts this new experience during these troubling times.
Yes. Okay, so some of the same words of wisdom. Work to stay safe and calm. If you're building new relationships with children, I'm going to say, even if you're reestablishing relationships, follow the child's lead. Really check their body language. Know whether they're a slow to warm kid who's going to need lots and lots of opportunity to check you out, and don't push them. Be kind of open to connecting with every child in whatever way. So you start to almost make a list. Okay, this child loves blocks. This child is a dinosaur guy. And you find the right props in the classroom to connect with each child. And then you just, very gently show interest in their play. You join in their play if they let you. And you become like this play partner. The same with your co-workers. Have the conversations. Say, I'm really feeling anxious. Have you got any strategies? But I think what you'll find is once the kids accept you, your anxieties are going to decrease significantly, because you get so caught up in the fun interactions of the kids that it's hard to stay stressed when you're hanging out with little kids. It's a pleasure to be invited into their world, and that's what I would recommend, is just go slow or go fast, whatever the way the kid is leading you.
Nice. Okay, we've got a question from Jeffrey relating to how are the learning gaps that we might be seeing with kids right now potentially adding to their stress, and what behaviors might we see as a result?
I think we're going to see an increase of issues around self-esteem, because kids, if you're talking learning gaps, then I'm guessing you're talking a little bit older kids who are well aware that they're being evaluated on what they know and what they don't know. So really, again, being very reassuring. You know what? This has been a really hard time. Lots of people haven't been learning. It's okay, it's okay, it's okay. I had to resort at one point to telling my daughter, one of my kids, that marks were squiggles on a piece of paper that represented her at 1 minute in time.
Right.
Really trying to diminish the academic learning and really trying to focus on the strengths of her amazing social emotional skills, and trying to help her see there's more than one way to be competent, because what we know about kids is they need to feel competent in order to feel like they're valued and accepted. And I really think that, I saw one Facebook comment I really liked. When kids go back to school, just play. Don't even talk about homework and lessons and cognitive stuff. The kids who are ready for that will find it in their play. And the kids who aren't will need the therapeutic value of the play to regain their confidence and their sense of safety.
Okay. There have been a few questions around sensory materials and sharing sensory materials. And so I appreciate that we can't, at this stage, predict what might be permitted and what might not be. Do you have any other ideas, Jan, if, for instance, those sensory materials might not be able to be shared once things reopen? Do you have any ideas on some alternatives?
we almost go back to sensory in infant and toddler programs where there are individual bins with their names and lids. And, even if it's water play, if each child has their own bin and their own playing item and their own scoop, or any kind of other sensory, but I think shared sensory is out. So it's really going to be a matter of lots and lots and lots of containers with names on and individual sensory options. We, in Kids Have Stress too, sometimes we talk about this almost as a comfort box. And this would be a really good strategy, is each child having their own kind of calming container where together you put things in their calming container that work for them. And, and I know a little guy who went to school, he had some, challenges with being on the autism spectrum, and having his very own comfort box that he could access when he started to get stressed, and it was things that his mom had helped him to pick from home to bring and have in his little comfort box. And I think that's a very important way of incorporating, like sensory that might be something soft or something fuzzy, but I think they would definitely have to be individual.
I love that idea. I feel like I need a calming box too, my own personal calming box. We could all use one.
I think we all do have our own calming boxes. Mostly for adults, it's pajamas,
right?
And a favorite pillow, or a favorite sweatshirt. But we all have those kinds of things that just make us feel good.
Right. Okay, we've got a few more questions coming in, and I'm just conscious of the time, so maybe we'll just take 2 more. Jan, do you see any differences in these strategies that you've shared today for children who might be exposed to toxic stress or chronic stress? Are there any additional strategies for the kids that might be exposed to that kind of stress?
So my strategy with a child who's constantly hypervigilant is to just work so consistently with that child to say, you know what, I understand. I know you're doing the best that you can, and it's very hard, and don't worry about being judged. I don't believe you're bad. I know that you're just finding it scary, finding it frustrating. You come to me every single time. If I see that you're stressed, I'm going to come to you every single time. And then you figure out a plan. And you know the plan, and the child knows the plan, and the parent knows the plan, and your teammates know the plan. And you say, your very first focus with a traumatized child is to meet that basic need of safety. And if that child has a total meltdown, a blowout, I believe that you treat it as if it were a medical emergency. And you say, okay, to your coworker or to the older kids, everybody move back, go to the other side of the room, or, if you've got, another coworker that can take them out in the hall, and give that child who's having a meltdown the privacy and the dignity of a safe space to regain their own self-regulation at their own pace. And I know that it works. Bruce Perry is an expert in this. He says at first you just talk softly, or you hum, or you deep breathe with the child so that they still feel your presence and they feel your calm. But you don't approach them until their body starts to relax, or they're going to see you as a threat and escalate. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks, Jan. So I think we'll just take this opportunity. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank you very much for sharing part 1 with us today. I learned a lot. I'm really excited to work through the caring dialogue, and I loved the piece around gazing skyward. So I look forward to doing that today. Jan, thanks so much, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
Thank you. I really enjoyed this opportunity in spite of the stuff over the technology. Take care, everybody, and have
Technology is always stressful, right? On behalf of the Psychology Foundation of Canada, I wanted to thank everyone here for joining us and for sharing your questions and your comments. And we'd love for you to return or join us again tomorrow. Please register if you haven't already, and keep a lookout for our recording that's going to be posted on our website. We'll also be posting our slides. So we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And I wanted to also just remind you that as a charity, we do rely on donations. So if it is within your means, we just encourage you to consider a donation to the Psychology Foundation of Canada so we can continue to do this kind of work and bring this information to you. Thanks, everybody, and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.